The biggest question marks of spring camp. Let's get to those. Caleb Calhoun with a great piece on Off the Hook Sports right now. So, as you assemble this list, tease me forward because I see what is number 10. I see number 9 and going on down. It looks like you started with special team, and then we go through the list. So, how did you assemble the word I'm looking for, this list, Caleb Calhoun?
So I looked at which position battles have blatant. It's which position battles have voids to fill, and which ones have more open competition where we don't know exactly who's in the running, and also which positions just matter more. I ranked all of those. I also factored in who's here in the spring because, as you know, not everybody's taking part in it. So, like I said earlier, defensive line and edge rusher, those are going to be some position battles. They're not going to be till fall camp. Don't read into what you see from them in the spring at all.
No. So, like I said before, there will be a spring practice tailback. It will get like 1,000 yards in spring practice, but he's not going to play in the fall.
Oh my gosh, you're so right. Every year I've covered spring, it's like this running back is really standing out.
Kirsten Vickers, Michael Stewart.
So I started with that, and then I ranked them a little bit by importance. So maybe I should have put place kicker higher because of that. Because honestly, football analytics say kicker is the second most important player on the field outside of the quarterback.
It's not true. All right, so let's run through these. The biggest questions of spring camp. You start off with kick returner number 10. Why?
Because Jimmy Holiday transferred, and he was Tennessee's feature kick returner. And so it's going to be pretty open, honestly, in the spring. I'm not really sure who's going to take the role. I would think maybe Dylan Sampson, because you've got two speedy backs in Jalen Wright and Dylan Sampson, and you got to find different ways to get each of them the ball. So I think maybe Dylan Sampson is a kick returner. Could be Squirrel White, but we don't know yet.
I like Dylan Sampson as a kick returner. Squirrel White feels more like a punt returner to me based off shiftiness. So we go down to number 9, place kicker. Chase McGrath is gone. Your thoughts on who fills in for McGrath, and do we figure it out in spring camp?
I figured it. I'm pretty sure it's Indiana transfer Charles Campbell, but Josh Tuberville was a highly touted. He's more of a punter, but he is doubles as a punter and a place kicker. But he was a highly touted recruit coming out. Toby Wilson has some experience, and JT Carver's still on the roster. But I think Josh Heupel brought on Charles Campbell for a reason. We're not going to know at the end of the spring because Josh Heupel's so darn cagey, he won't even admit who wins the starting kicker job.
Yeah, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. All right, so the next one, we've got punter at number 8. Could that be Tuberville as well? Possible?
Tuberville's my favorite to win this. Yeah, I got Tuberville. I know Colby Morgan has had a couple of punts in the past, I believe. Jackson Ross, I don't think he's had any punts in the past with the program, but I think Josh Tuberville is the one with the rare leg. How about that?
Yep. And tight end. You have as a question mark. I think we think Tennessee's very good, in good shape with Jacob Warren, but they want 2 tight ends that are bona fide. So I would imagine they would like for somebody to step up pretty quickly in that second tight end spot, because I think they're good with Warren, but maybe McCallan Castle steps in there. I think Ethan Davis, the 4-star guy, is probably still a little bit raw from what I'm hearing, but you would like somebody to step in this fall to be the guy that rotates with Jacob.
Yeah, and just so people know, when I say something as a question or a position battle, I don't mean that it's something to worry about in the fall. It just means that we don't know exactly who's going to fill a void that was left. And I think tight end is one of those where you have some options. Obviously, Jacob Warren is a returning one. I think Heupel likes to have one physically imposing tight end, and Jacob Warren and Charlie Browder both fill that role. Warren is going to be the one, obviously, that starts on that. And then you want kind of your playmaking tight end who can, between the 20s, get you a lot of yards on a pass catch or things like that. That's where Ethan Davis will come into play, or McCallan Castles. That is a bit of a question, because if Ethan Davis is raw, we don't know how good McCallan Castles is going to be. So they may be a little short on your playmaking tight end. You know, the tight end that can take a 5-yard out route and turn it into a 60-yard gain. That type of tight end.
True, and they're going to have have a guy that can step in, and it may be Jacob, I don't know, but that can step in and be that versatile athlete close to the goal line that Princeton Fant was. So play a little bit of fullback as well. And Jacob may be that guy. McCallan Castles may be that guy, or they might have to find somebody else. But we'll see. I haven't gotten any inclination from the people I've talked to either way. Weak side linebacker. Yes, I think that's very important, significant. Who steps up and there from a weak side linebacker standpoint in your mind, Caleb, is a spring camp opening now?
Well, obviously, strong side, middle linebacker Aaron Beasley's there. And the good news for Tennessee on this is everybody who's going to play linebacker is already there for the spring. So Josh Heupel, I think they were already there in December. So Heupel can get it, and Jeremy Banks had already left. And everybody was probably seeing good riddance. So Josh Heupel can really, he's already got a head start on this race. I think it's going to be Keenan Peely. I think the experience matters more than anything. I think there are a lot of young guns, though, that you're going to see make a push into the rotation. But Keenan Peely is going to, I think, walk away with this job pretty easily.
Yep. I believe that as well. I think that he is going to be a really good player. And then wide receiver, don't have a lot of concern. And that would sound crazy since the Vols are potentially losing, well, potentially 2 first-round picks. I think it's probably going to be a late first to mid-second on Tillman and probably a late second to third on Jalen Hyatt from people I'm talking to. But let's say 2 top 3-round picks. It would say crazy to think that Tennessee's okay at wide receiver, but I actually think they are.
Yeah, I think they're fine. This is just a big question over who's going to fill the voids. I mentioned wide receiver because technically there are 2 voids to fill with Tillman and slot. There's not really a void at wideout, though. Brew McCoy and Ramel Keaton were playing wideout for most of the season anyway last year, and I think they're going to be the 2 main wideouts. The question is really in the slot. Is Dante Thornton or Squirrel White going to be the guy? 2 different type of slot receivers, but I as much as I'm a fan of Squirrel White, I think the job's going to Dante Thornton. I just think that I don't know. You can't teach that size, and that's just a rare opportunity for Tennessee's offense just to be historically amazing.
Let's go back to tight ends for just a second because J Mac Volunteer on the message board had a question. Saw the tight end size today when they released newcomer heights, weights, and numbers. Castles and Davis are both 6'5", 230. It's a good size, but y'all think they should have more weight. I have no issue with the amount of weight that Davis is carrying right now from watching his tape and talking to people over there. So if he's at 230, that's great. I just think he has to pick up some of the nuances of running routes, pass protection. I think that's his issue. Castles, remember, is a transfer, so he's a more mature body, Caleb. So you would think he would be a little bit bigger. And again, same thing. I think that physically he's fine, but you just want to make sure you can't allow any freedom to some guy to get on the field, Caleb, that doesn't know pass pro. So I think that's the biggest challenge for either Ethan or McCallan Castles. I mean, you have to be sure and protect Tennessee's passer. That's a mainstay for this offense.
Yeah, picking up those nuances matter more. I think the 230 range is fine for those 2. Remember, Charlie Browder and Jacob Warren are in the 6'7", 250 range, I believe. Isn't Jacob Warren 6'7", right?
He's right at 6'6", but it wouldn't surprise me if he'd gotten up to 6'7".
Okay, so yeah, they're in the 6'7", 250 range. There are 2 different types of tight ends Heupel uses. Browder and Warren are more, again, they're oftentimes goal line tight ends. I would say red zone tight ends, where they can be physically imposing, where no one can really guard them if you're trying to throw it past them in the end zone. It's okay for Castles and Davis to be in the 230 range because Princeton Fant, I think, was only 235. And if you're going to have the tight end that can be a pass protector, but also, like we said, be the athlete, they're normally going to be more in the 230s range than the 250s range, usually. So I think that's fine.
Agreed. So we hit wide receivers. Let's get to quarterback. You know where I stand. I do still believe, again, no insight. I'm not Dennis Dodding you at all, but I do believe that just the way I look at this, outside looking in, and nothing really to give you any insight as to Joe Milton's tanking, or I don't mean anything like that. I think he's doing just fine, but I think that will start at some point based off what he does, not necessarily what Joe Milton does. And in other words, I don't think Joe Milton loses the job, but I think that we'll get it eventually. I know you disagree, and a lot of people do, Caleb, but you do have quarterbacks pretty high on your list of questions entering spring. So what say you?
Yeah, I have it high because quarterback is the most important position on the field. So, I mean,
Kind of like the rook card, you know?
yeah, exactly. I will say this, Dave, something working in your favor.
Travis says, and here it is. I'm not hating on Joe Milton. If I could get a clip of him pronouncing his name like this, I would do it. But he would just say Joe Milton. It's as easy as Dave Hooker or Caleb Calhoun.
Joe Milton III, so we got to do the Duke voice. Joe Milton III.
Joe Milton III, Jr. Esquire.
Yes. How excited were you about the fact that Iam Aliava comes in at 205 and not 195? Does that make you even more bullish on Nico?
I'm pretty bullish. I think that guy's going to be able to. I think he can do a lot, so I'm not worried about taking a couple extra protein shakes.
Yeah. So do you think he needs? He's 6'6". So do you think he needs to get to 215?
I mean, I think he eventually needs to play at 225 or 230.
Wow, that's like a big quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, that's the only question I have is frame's a little slight. So, yeah, I think he needs. I mean, I'm not talking about this year, but where will he play in 3 years? I think he would easily play at 225 or 230, don't you?
Yeah, I think I could see him get. I mean, I haven't covered all season conditioning the way you probably have. I mean, is it easy to put on like 30 pounds in the course of a couple of years?
Not in just this season, but I believe before he's rolling out there as everybody would expect the starter into 2024 that Nico will be at 225, 230 at a minimum, and then just continue to get bigger and fill out his frame. It happens to us old guys, Caleb.
Well,
I guess it just comes on, man.
I guess it helps because, like, I guess you're a quarterback. You're not doing the type of drills where you're running nonstop every day, so you're not constantly burning calories, right? Playing quarterback, the way you would be. Like if you're playing receiver, that's going to be hard to put on 30 pounds.
Right. So you got offensive tackle in at third. They replaced a guy named Darnell Wright, who was probably the most gifted athlete that Tennessee had on the roster. That's a pretty big guy, no pun intended, to replace. But I actually think that Tennessee will be okay in that regard. And I think it'll be Crawford or Mincy on the right side. And I think that they'll battle there. There will be a step down. But as far as losing one of their top players overall, I think Tennessee will be able to handle it. They won't be as good at right tackle, though, no question.
Yeah, so tackle I put in here, and I made a point to say that I'm not including the left guard spot, which Jerome Carr would left void. And the reason I haven't put that in is that one's much more wide open, and you got two linemen who aren't going to arrive until the summer who could be in the race for that. So I stuck with tackle, and the reason I did is, you're right, Gerald Mincy and Jeremiah Crawford, both returning co-starters, I guess you could say, plus Andres Carrick and John Campbell Jr., two transfers. Two of those four guys are going to occupy the tackle spots. That's what's going to happen.
Yes, and I think Carrick is going to be at that guard position. I think he's going to be really good, just for the record. Cornerback, number 2 on your list of questions entering spring camp. Absolutely. I mean, that it's going to continue to be a question mark until it's not, is the easiest way to put it, Caleb.
Yeah, they return everybody at cornerback, and it's still like one of the top 2 position battles.
They had signs up. We'll even take a guy named Caleb and Dave.
Yeah, I don't think this one needs any explanation.
It's like the back in the days, and this still happens, okay, on occasion. Like the Cowboys, when, for instance, when their kicker missed 48 extra points in a game. But they had a kicker come in and try out. Remember when they used to, from time to time, they've done this at the college level where they'll take walk-ons to come in and try out?
Yes.
Is that not the most? I mean, I've had Philip Fulmer who had to say that. And I think Lane Kiffin at one point said, we'll take anybody that can kick or something. I think that was after the Mount Cody game. But is that not the ultimate indictment? If you've been at a program for 3 or 4 years and you don't have a kicker lined up of your roster management, that is terrible, right?
Yeah, that's a huge indictment of it.
I mean, if it's year 1, I get it. But in there 3 or 4.
The thing with kickers, though, I mean, there is the point of you can only scout so well because kicker psyches are the most fragile thing in all of sports. You could miss one kick and just completely melt down after that and never hit anything again. You bring up Daniel Lincoln with the Mount Cody game. Daniel Lincoln was an All-American in 2007.
Yeah, I'm trying to. Well,
Alex Rawls was an
that would
All-American.
have been 2009, the Mount Cody game.
Right, but Daniel Lincoln was the one who had the kick blocked, and he was an All-American in 2007.
Right.
And just that.
I thought that was a weird throwaway line by Lane. That kind of threw his kicker under the bus a little bit.
Well, I thought the way he coached that game was to throw his kicker under the bus, but that's just me. I thought that you go for more yards to get an easier field goal, but Lane Kiffin didn't want to be blamed for something going wrong if he did that. I'm sorry, I believed that from the start.
I won't roll with the motivation, but I'll roll that it was a bad decision. And lastly, number one, you've got free safety, which we talked about. Replacing Trey Flowers will be a challenge. I like Jalen McCullough maybe a little bit more. They could go in a couple of different directions. Let's remember we thought Wesley Walker and Andre Turrentine were just going to step on the 2022 a preseason camp, a field, and just be able to snag starting positions. I'm not going to start making those type of predictions, but somebody will come out of somewhere like Slaughter did this past year and be able to provide a lift. You would think at safety, just because, man, it's vacant.
Yes, no, I agree. I don't think it's going to be McCullough because I think McCullough is going to stick with that strong safety spot on the other side. He's a harder hitter. He's more of a playmaker. I think the problem, luckily for Tennessee, everybody's there, so they can really get a good look early on at this. But this is a really difficult void to fill. Cornerback's an open position because everybody's just terrible, and you need to find somebody decent. Free safety's an open position because the cornerback spot's still going to be terrible, and you need to find somebody who can play free safety and cover for the deficiencies that are going to be at cornerback. That's going to be really hard.
Yep.
Which we learned, by the way, for anybody who wants to know how safeties make cornerbacks, look at Richard Sherman's career after he stopped having Earl Thomas back him up in the NFL.
Yeah, it's huge. Fred White, who joins us, is our safety of choice each and every Friday, a Football Friday with Fred.